is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah! Let's go, baby!
Are you ready for a break?
Yes.
Are you ready for a break?
Absolutely.
Ready for a break?
Yeah, and so much for that.
It's time for The Break on DallasCowboys.com.
We were on the break!
With Nick Eatman, David Hellman, Ambar Garcia, and Derek Eagleton.
2020 Season 16, Episode number 10. Welcome to another edition of The Break. We are live from the virtual SWBC Mortgage Studios at the Star. And as you can hear, Dave Hellman's typing away, and he's so excited to be joining this show. And very happy you guys could take some time with us to talk a little Cowboys football here on The Break. Lots of things, well, I should say lots of things, but some things are actually moving in the NFL. We'll start today talking a little bit about Jerry returning to the Star. A little later, we got a new segment that will be starting up probably about 5 minutes from now. We call it Story Time on The Break, and our storyteller today is none other than Darren Woodson. He's got a few stories for us. We'll try to do that every week, have a special guest in to tell us some interesting stories from behind the curtains at the Star with the Cowboys. In addition to that, we'll also get into some of the conversations around the owners' meetings, and then talk a little bit about Chido Awuzie in the final segment. How's everybody doing today?
Good. I just want you to know I was promoting the show on Twitter, so, you know.
I wasn't doubting that you were doing something very important. It sounded like you were doing something very important, so I appreciate that. That's good.
Okay.
Let's jump
I'm great.
in. Jerry returned to the Star yesterday, Nick, and you had an opportunity to write an article about that. First of all, tell me right now, tell me for the fans out there who don't know, what are teams allowed to do at this point? What has the NFL said as far as what teams are allowed to do as of today, as of yesterday, really?
The big thing is that no coaches or players are allowed in the building for competitive reasons, and that's because you have to have the guidelines of the state, of your own state, to be able to return to work. Obviously, Texas has been very public. Texas is reopened, so that works for the Cowboys. So they can have no more than 75 people in the building, or 50%, just depends on how big your organization is. The Cowboys obviously have way more than 150 employees, so 75 is the max. And if somebody's going to lead it off on Tuesday, it might as well be Jerry Jones and the Jones family. So, Jerry had a virtual owners meeting call that he wanted to take, and he wanted to make sure and do it in the office. He's kind of leading the charge as the Cowboys are working their way, like other teams, working their way back.
And just to be clear, healthy players and coaches are not allowed in the facility as of right now, based upon the NFL rules, because the NFL wants to ensure that all teams have a fair footing. So until all teams have access to be able to get back into their buildings, no healthy players or coaches will be allowed in the building. Nick, I'll ask you too, what's the significance of Jerry being at the Star yesterday? Was there significance in that?
I think the significance of, people are working again. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they did an NFL draft virtually. I mean, we all know where he was for the draft. So he didn't have to be in the building to take that call. We know that. But what it symbolizes is that, this is the first step back. And, I think some of his other vice presidents and front office personnel were able to go up there. There wasn't a lot of people there, but it's the first step, and hopefully many steps that we all can get back in there.
Yep. All right, let's. We should be having Darren Woodson joining us here in just a moment. We'll get into a lot of different topics with him. Until we do that, though, I wanted to start a little conversation. I saw something really interesting on NFL.com yesterday. Cynthia Freeland, NFL.com writer. She was talking about all the different teams, and she identified one player on all 32 teams that she said was underappreciated based upon how people viewed them. And it's interesting that the player that she pointed out for the Cowboys. Now, I'll read you this quote. She's talking about Chido Awuzie. She said he's been far less talked about despite forcing 18 incompletions in 2019, that being the third most in the NFL. Pretty impressive stuff. I'm going to leave you with that, and we'll think about that, and we'll get to that. Right now, we're being joined by a guy that I just think the world of as a former player of the Cowboys. He was a 1992 All-Rookie Team member. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Mr. Darren Woodson. Welcome to the show, Darren.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. About time y'all got me back on. Put this, hey, you're not going to put this on Derek. I'm not putting it on you. I'm putting it on Nick.
Wait. Hold on. Real quick, Woodson. When Derek says how much he loves you and all that stuff, have you seen his office? He's got some random picture behind there. Have you seen our office, though? I mean, our office I think you're well represented in our office, so I don't know why you're going to put that on me.
Yeah, you're right. I can't throw it on Amber. I can't throw it on anybody else.
Nick, quit trying to look good and sound good right now. That picture was put there, okay? It was not by your choice. It was not your choice.
That's absolutely false right there, because Shannon and I had 1,000 pictures we could pick from, and we chose that one. We put it there, and actually it wasn't high enough or it wasn't low enough or whatever. It was a big ordeal, and then Darren came and signed it. So, yeah, it definitely was our choice. Hey, Shannon, who do you want to put in here? Darren Woodson. Sounds good. What's up, buddy?
Man.
To get you going, though, tell us a little bit about how you and your family are doing, how y'all are dealing with, I guess, what everybody's dealing with, of restrictions and staying at home and all those kinds of things.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to those that are suffering through COVID, because there's, some of us are impacted more than others. I've had some friends. Charlie Williams, a good teammate of ours, mine in the 90s, he lost his brother through COVID. So, I mean, it's, for some of us, it hasn't been that big of an impact outside of just, logistically being such. But, for a lot of us, health-wise, it has. And, my heart goes out to those families. For myself, it's been different. Being home, as you guys well know, I travel a lot, whether it be through business or and mostly through business. And, I'm home now. The family is probably about ready for me to get the heck out of the house. I'm back in my office, as you can probably see today. I'm right here near the atrium of the Cowboys headquarters. So I'm back in the office right now. We're coming back. They're trying to slowly get back in. I'm in the office twice a week. So, things are on the uptick, man. So hopefully we can make this turn.
That's good stuff. Dave, do you have a question?
I actually do, Darren. I know it's been a while since you've been on the break. I feel like we haven't had you in a long enough time that I'm not sure that me and Amber are kind of like the safety whisperers of the Dallas Cowboys media. And so having the best safety in Cowboys history, I feel like I just have to get your stance, because I'm not sure I've heard it, just about where things have stood with that position on this team for so long. Because every year it seems like we're saying, well, they're not going to find their Darren Woodson in the draft this year. And as a guy who played the position for the Cowboys, I looked this up when I heard you were going to be on the show. The only safety they've drafted as highly as they drafted since you was Roy Williams.
Yeah.
They really have not prioritized it. And as somebody who appreciates the position, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, I'd love for them to go out and get a draft a safety early. Of course, I think we all do. But listen, trust me, the role of being a GM across the league, not just the Cowboys, it's a tough deal. I mean, it's a tough situation, especially when there's players that are falling to you, similar to this year when CD Lamb fell to them at that spot. I mean, how do you bypass that and reach for safety? So for any GM, that's a hard job to have. But if we keep going back to that topic of, well, we haven't had a safety since, and in my opinion, I think Roy Williams was an awesome pick when we got him. I think it was number 8 or so. When he was drafted, and his production was unbelievable. I don't know if there was anybody who had a 5-year span that played at that level. Roy was awesome. And I look at teams, as time has gone on, you see the safeties that get drafted early. Some safeties that get drafted early are those guys that, like the Troy Polamalos, that got drafted early, the Ed Reeds that get drafted early. If you want a legitimate safety, you're going to have to take a chance and get that guy early. But the Cowboys have been in situations where it's been, no offense to Heath, but Heath was a special teamer who was converted to be in a safety. And if you're going to play it that way, if you're going to have a guy who's not picked early as a safety, didn't have a huge college career as being a guy who turned the ball over at the safety position, but now you expect a special teamer to come in and fit that role. You're not going to have a guy that's going to play at that high level at that position. So yeah, I'm with you guys. If you want a guy, or if you want to go trade for Jamal Adams, hey, I'd love to have Adams there. But there's going to be some issues when you do so. You got to give up a lot.
That's Dave's guy, as a former LSU guy. He's been on that bandwagon for a while now.
Absolutely.
Did you have something for Darren?
I mean, looking at what they have done right now, obviously we know that they didn't draft the safety, and you talked about that. But looking at Clinton Dix that they got during free agency, and the 4 guys that they currently have, and the thought of maybe moving some of these cornerbacks into the safety position, how do you currently feel with the safety position and looking at the guys that the Cowboys currently have for this year?
I thought it was good. When they brought in Clinton Dix, I felt like, that was a good pickup for them based on there is familiarity as far as understanding this. Every time I say that name, it just kills me. But he's familiar with this defense. He'll understand what exactly they need to get done. And he can always teach the guys who aren't familiar with this defense. So I thought that was a good pickup, knowing that there's going to be at least some immediate leadership in the knowledge, as far as the knowledge aspect. I think this team is doing what they can right now at that position. I don't have a problem. I'm not big on moving guys from the cornerback position into the safety position just because you have to, just because of need. I think there's still some safeties out there, some veteran safeties out there that you can probably take a look at. But the guys that are playing corner right now, I think they should stay where they are right now. Look, I know that we had a down season last year. Byron Jones is no longer here. What was his name? Cheeto. Cheeto didn't have a great season last year, but I don't know if you force him into another position. Let's see what he does this year. Let's go through training camp. See how he's feeling about the position, because he may not want to make that change. He may feel like, no, I'm a corner. This is what I do. So, let's fill him out. With COVID, you can't really get a good look because we can't get out there on the football field right now, and it's going to be a process going through training camp. But I think they're looking at it now as they're bringing in these pieces at the safety position. I'm not so sure that you move a guy like Cheeto into that position just yet. Let's play it out. And corners don't want to hit. So having that mentality, that's going to be more. That's more of a change than you think.
In that case, I was just going to say, so when you look at the secondary overall, corner and safety position, how do you feel just overall?
I thought, even though Byron didn't turn the ball over and didn't make dynamic plays on the ball, he was a very good corner on the outside. He was a very good defensive player and did some good things on the outside. Replacing that production is going to be hard. Now, again, people are always taking shots at the fact that he didn't have a lot of interceptions, but he played extremely well. I just think he was a veteran guy, athletic, and you didn't have to worry about Byron. And Byron played through a lot of injuries as well. He was available. And that says a lot to me when you have that kind of guy who's going to be available to play week in and week out. Without that, I'm a little nervous going into the season because I thought he was a tremendous athlete and a guy that was available. So I'm concerned about that role being out there, that player.
Well, I was hoping you would make me feel better, but you are not making me feel better right now.
Nick, you're up.
We're going to have him tell some stories.
Yeah, I know you said that there were a couple stories that you thought Darren would be the perfect person to tell. Let's get into a little story time here on the break.
Yeah, Darren, we've had a lot of interviews over the years, and you told some great stories. And A couple that come to mind were I think both from the same season. You were a veteran in 2003. Bill Parcells comes in. He was looking at you to help scorch the earth, as you've said before. But talk about a couple of rookies from that team and that kind of caught your eye or caught your ear and just maybe even called you out, actually.
Well, what year was that? Was that 2000 or 2003?
2003, Bill Parcells took over.
Yeah. Okay, so immediately, the one story I do have that I can remember is when Romo came in, and at the time I think we had Quincy Carter, Chad Hutchinson, and Drew Henson were our quarterbacks. If I named those right, I think those were our top three guys. Was Drew Henson here?
Lance Sterner.
Oh, yeah. Was it Sterner? Sterner was here. Was Chad Hutchinson not here?
He was at 03, yeah. He was, but not Drew yet. But it was Romo, Carter, yeah.
I instantly felt like Romo was the guy. Like instantly. It was, the ball came off his hands differently than all the other quarterbacks, especially Quincy Carter, because you never knew what you're getting with Quincy. And Quincy was considered the starter at the time. Romo came in, and he was just running scout team. And I just felt like there was something about him, and Sean Payton was taking his time with Romo off to the side and trying to get him. And I kept looking at this guy like, this dude's out here killing us on scout team. And even to the point where, Romo would hold the ball and he would scramble around, and I was the guy on defense like, that's never going to happen in a game. You're not going to be able to move around and scramble like that and buy time for these wide receivers. This doesn't work that way in the NFL, son. I was the old man saying all this. Fast forward, Romo was exactly who that was as far as buying time in the pocket. But he was just showing out, man, in practice, and made us look silly at times. And I was with Bill Parcells, and Bill used to sit way in the back and watch practice. And he would sit and he would, behind the defensive back. So basically, the drills going on, 7-on-7 or the team drills going on, he'd be way behind the defense on the field, and he'd just be watching. So he calls me out there on the field, and he says, hey, which one of these guys do you like? And I'm looking at him. I said, what do you mean, which guy? He says, which one of the quarterbacks do you like? And I said, well, the kid over here, the first year kid right here, the free agent. And he's like, yeah, Romo. And I said, he's the one. And he looks at me and he says, I can't say it on the air. He says, GD, I can't play him right now. Yeah, but I can't play him right now. And I'm like, I said, well, you asked. I said, he's better than all these guys. He says, yeah, I know, but he can't play right now. What about the other guys? And I'm like, well, conversation's dead. So it was about a week later that this is in minicamp. We come back in after one of the practices, and Romo was very inquisitive. I mean, extremely inquisitive. And he would ask questions. He didn't care, man. He'd walk up to a guy like me, a veteran player. He would ask me questions about defense and blah, 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 blah. And he was asking me about cover 3 at the time. Why we did this and why we did that as a secondary. And, when they motion across, why we inverted. So, and they were really good questions. And I told him, we were having this conversation. I said, man, by the way, I said, man, look, I don't know what you feel about yourself and your talents. And he's like, well, I feel pretty good. I'm getting comfortable. I said, no, man. I said, look, you are by far the best quarterback we have out there right now. By far. It ain't even close. And he just looked at me, and I almost, that that Romo look too, that head to the side look. I almost knew that he knew that. But it was confirmation from me at the same time. But he was built differently mentally. Why? I mean, you always know Romo's being dumpy. Of course, he wasn't like the most physical looking guy, but he just had this confidence about his approach to the game that just stood out to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he probably was like, see, there's another one that thinks so. You know, Woodson thinks so too. So
I was probably the first one that said it to him. I guarantee I know Parcells didn't say it to him. I know that was a fact.
No.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing was that Nick and I used to host a show the night before games on the road. It's called the Road Show. And we had Tony on one game before while he was a rookie, I think, Nick, wasn't it? I know it was before he was the starter.
He wasn't playing. I don't remember what year.
But he told us at the end of the show, I will be the starting quarterback for this team at some point. And we all, everybody got silent for a second, and then it was kind of like, all right, thanks for joining us. We're ready to end the show. We'll catch you next time.
Sorry, Tony.
Show, right? But no, I mean, he always had that confidence. He always felt like he was going to be the guy at some point, and obviously it all came true for him.
Oh, he was. I saw it right away when he joined our flag football team, and we couldn't call him Tony. We called him T, but nobody in town knew what his face looked like, so he could play with us. He was really good in the regular season. I can tell you that. Playoffs, not so good, but regular
There
season.
you go.
Wow.
There you go, Nick.
It's just, it was a fact. I mean, he threw 5 interceptions in a playoff game in flag football. So I was thinking, that's probably never going to happen. So when he was telling Derek that, I think I flashed back to that, like, yeah, that didn't work out so well. We'll see about that. T. Yeah. But by far the best athlete on the field, offense, defense, I mean, a bunch of scrubs like us, but I'm just saying, you could see he was a great athlete and a very great, mind of the game and all that. So, yeah, you could definitely tell that right away. Do we have time for one more story?
Yeah, well, that same class, man. I'll tell you another one. That same class was with Jason Witten. Witt came in that year, and at the time, I remember someone saying like he was the youngest guy on the team. He was like 20 years old when he came in or whatnot, and I was like, man, he's a good-looking dude. I mean, Witt looks good now, but he looked really good when he first came in. I mean, he and much more athletic and much faster than he is near at the end of his career. But he came in, and all the defensive backs, the safeties. I used to cover the slot receivers, so I would never go out and do one-on-ones against the tight ends. That was like a slap in the face. And Zimmer would be like, "You want to go cover the tight ends?" I'm like, "Man, please, cover the tight end? Really? That's a slap in the face. Cover him blindfolded." Right? So we're on 2 separate fields. I'm covering the wide receivers on one field. The linebackers and some of the safeties are over covering the tight ends and the running backs on the other field. And you can hear the chatter go back and forth. There's always this trash talking when you're doing one-on-ones. And I'm over there covering the wide receivers, and then I can hear this young dude, 82 over on the other sideline. As a rookie, he's barking like, "I'm killing these dudes over here, blah, blah, blah." And he's calling my name out on the other side of the field. "Woodson, come over here and get you some." And I was like, this little punk rookie is calling me out, right? So Zimmer was back, of course, standing next to me. He's laughing. Zim knows how good this kid is over there. I hadn't even seen Witten, actually. I didn't know who he was. I mean, I saw him in practice here and there. I thought, he's talented. But I had never faced him in a one-on-one situation. So Zimmer says, "Hey, man, you need to go get you some of that." I said, "Cover a tight end, really?" He said, "You need to go see this kid. This kid can flat out get it. He can play." So I said, "I'm going to go give him some. I'm going to go give him." And I used to always call myself the Claw back then. I was like, yeah, the Claw is going to go give him, I'm going to go kill this kid. So I'll go on over there, and I'll run over there. He's like, "Yeah, it's about time." And I'm like, man, first of all, I can't believe you're talking to me this crazy way. So I said, "Get your ass up there." Excuse my language. I'm sorry. So I'm like, I have a flashback. I'm sorry. So get on up there. So he gets on up there, man. He runs a little like crossing route. And I'm like, man, no. And then Romo, I think it's Romo or someone throws in the ball, and it's a crossing route. I said, "You can't run crossing routes in one-on-ones." So he gets back up there, and he runs a quick route. I get my hand on the ball. Boom, knock it down. And I'm whooping. And I'm killing you. Rookie, little baby over here calling me out. Why am I wasting my time? That's me. I'm wasting my time over here. So I'm about to run back every time. No, come back and get you some. So I run back over, and I line up against him, and he kills me 2 straight rounds, like double moves, does his. And I'm like, this little. And I was like, this kid can run a route. And it was impressive because it just, every time it got to a point to where every time that I knew he was on the other side, I said, I got to go get me some of that. Like that was the competitive nature we had in the 90s where Jay Novacek was out there and, we were going back and forth and the trash talking was, exponentially. And that's what I missed in that break until Witten got there, is that you have a guy at the tight end position that could really play and knew he could play and wanted to get better. He wanted to go up against the best every single time. And I thought that was that. And that's why he's a Hall of Famer, man. He's just extremely competitive and wants it more than most.
Really great stories, Darren. And before we let you go, I know you got to get out of here, but real quick, I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about your podcast. I know that's something that's near and dear to you. And so just tell the people a little bit about the concept of the podcast and then tell them where they can find it so they can listen in.
So it's the podcast, The Darren Woodson Show. It's myself, Tyler Klutz, who played for a short time with the Cowboys. I always joke with Tyler. I said, man, you played on damn near every continent, on every football team in the history, CFL, NFL, everywhere. He played 7 years in the league. And we have another guy named Ben Gibbs, who played tight end at ACU and great athlete, tore his knee up. But we all work together in the same office at ESRP, the commercial real estate firm here at the Cowboys headquarters. And for the longest time, we've always had these conversations. Tyler and Ben were always talking about, hey, man, you love to hear these stories. Not just football stories, but stories about CEOs and doctors. He said, we should start a podcast. Ben Gibbs personally said, we should start a podcast and just hear interesting stories. And I had just retired from ESPN. So I was like, I'm done with the media stuff. I just didn't want to go through that process again. And they finally convinced me. We finally have our first show, man, and I fell in love. It was like, this is not an ESPN show where we're scripted. We only have 2 minutes to get our point across. This is a podcast where we get all the way deep down, extremely transparent. We want to hear the stories. We want to hear the ups and downs. Just yesterday, we had Troy Aikman on the show, and the show wasn't so much about the football side, but it was about his life stories. And if you hear Troy's story, there's so many times where he was at the bottom, breaking his ankle at Oklahoma and losing his job to Jamel Holloway, and the mindset that he had to overcome, the fact that he had to transfer out, the fact that he wanted to play baseball, really didn't care too much about football. Man, it's interesting to hear these stories because we always see the final product. We don't hear about the ups and downs they had to get to, the challenges they had to overcome to get to that goal. So that's what the Darren Woodson Show is all about. Interesting stories, all verticals, not just sports, but all verticals.
Where can we find it?
You can find it on Instagram. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it all on social media, on Apple. We're on all those social channels.
Awesome. Perfect. Hey, man, we really do appreciate you coming to join us. And don't be a stranger, man. You can always come on. Anytime you want to come join us.
You got to beg on the show. All right.
Hey, we're going to go and take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the owners' meetings with the NFL. Then when we come right back, this is DallasCowboys.com radio.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to...
It's right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus.
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down. Based on GWS 1 score, September 2019.
Do you want the most interesting, up-to-the-minute Dallas Cowboys news straight from the Star in Frisco? How about exclusive and on command? That's right, news and nuggets you can't find anywhere else. With our exclusive Cowboys content on Alexa, you can have all the answers, secrets, stories, and more. What's Stephen Jones thinking during a game? What's Joe Looney's favorite pregame meal? We take your questions to Cowboys players and coaches, and you can hear the answers directly back to you. Just say, Alexa, open Dallas Cowboys.
Whether you're into being a part of this or more into something like this, SeatGeek has the tickets to the events you love. It's the easiest way to find, buy, and sell tickets. Plus, with their Deal Score technology, they'll recommend the best seats in the house at the best value. So the next time you're craving this,
Ready? Blue 20.
download the SeatGeek app and let's go. SeatGeek.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again for Tailgating with the OtterBox Boys.
OtterBox, the company that builds wildly overprotective phone cases?
The one and only.
Yeah, what happened in the locker room? What were people saying? Did he talk to Antonio? Like, that could be good stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Back to the break.
We're live here at the virtual SWBC Mortgage Studios from our homes, and we're talking Cowboys football with you guys here for the next 20, 30 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Let's jump into a little bit of the owners' meetings. Jerry, as we mentioned earlier in the show, was back at the Star. He was there in order to do the owners' meetings virtually from his office at the Star. And really, I guess the most important thing that came out of those meetings, or at least the things that were released to the public, and the public got word of that came out of those meetings, really revolved around diversity and inclusion. There were a couple of rules changes that were enacted yesterday, or resolutions that were passed that were really made in hopes of being able to create more diversity among head coaches, among coordinators, among front office personnel in the NFL. Right now, there are 4 minority head coaches in the NFL: Mike Tomlin, Anthony Lynn, Ron Rivera, and Brian Flores. There are also 2 minority GMs, Chris Grier and Andrew Berry. But now what teams will be forced to reckon with regard to this is they must interview 2 minority head coaches that are external to their organization, so it can't be coaches that are currently on their staff. They also have to interview at least 1 external minority candidate for all DC, OC, senior football, and GM positions. And then they're no longer allowed to block assistant coaches who are from interviewing for those coordinator positions. Some of the things that have been talked about is some of these coaches have a hard time right now because they're blocked by their teams from being allowed to pursue coordinator positions while they're still under contract with a particular team. So I'll ask you guys the questions. How do you think this affects teams? How do you think these changes affect the teams with regards to their hiring practices?
Well, first of all, I love the last thing you just said. I love that rule better than any of them. And that helps all coaches. If you're a running backs coach and you want to be an offensive coordinator, but you still have 2 years left on your deal, and you need that security to have that contract, I think it's very important to be able to not be blocked that way. I've seen the Cowboys have blocked a couple of coaches in that regard, and that just gives them one step further, because you rarely see a head coach hired from anything other than a coordinator spot. So that just puts them in that one step closer to it. Of all the things that you said, I love that one the most, because I do think that helps every coach in the business, regardless what they look like. I think that does help them. So I do love that rule. I like the other ones too, but I think that one is going to be very beneficial for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I think it feels like a step in the right direction. I don't think anybody has like a perfect answer to the solution. I'm glad the NFL is trying to be proactive about it. I mean, you're talking about a league that's 70% African American with how many? I mean, what did you say? Two GMs and
4 head coaches and 2 GMs.
Yeah, I mean, do the math on that. 70% African American league with like a 12% representation in the upper echelon. Obviously, it's something that should be addressed. I hope it helps. I don't know. I can't sit here and say that it 100% will, though, because at the end of the day, just like every other business, it's really more about who you know than what you know, in my opinion. I had a conversation with somebody relatively important one time that I think kind of got to the crux of this whole issue, and he was like, well, you really think an NFL team wouldn't hire a guy because he's black in this day and age? Like, you really believe that? And I was like, no, I don't. That's not the point at all. I think it's that if you don't get face to face with people and meet new people, then you're just going to continue this perpetuation. And it's kind of like people get mad when a coach's son gets hired. Not necessarily that the guy's not qualified. It's just that you looked across the hall and you're like, oh yeah, I know him, and you're just ignoring a whole host of other people. So hopefully, I really like the idea that you've got to interview somebody from outside the organization, because it makes it at least a little bit harder to just check the box and move on. Maybe you give somebody from the outside a chance to come in and really blow you away. But at the end of the day, it's not going to stop people from hiring someone they're comfortable with. And in a league where 75% of the power structure is white, more often than not, a person they're comfortable with is probably also going to be white. So I don't know that this guarantees to fix anything. I think it's a step in the right direction, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think that, like, me personally, given like my own personal experiences since I moved to the United States and just kind of being involved in a new culture and everything, I would not be where I'm at had I not been given a chance to do anything, So you don't know how much, like Dave said, you don't know how much it will actually change. But the fact of bringing some other people from the outside, being face to face, and just at least presenting the chance for that person to enchant you, to make you like them, to let them voice their opinion, their thoughts, their visions. I think that hopefully that's definitely a great start, to keep moving towards the right direction. And by those chances, if someone is given a chance and then they take it and it works out, then it'll hopefully open up more eyes and open things up better and think like, okay, well, maybe going outside of our comfort zone isn't that bad. Maybe we can try that and it will just work out fine. So I like that. Who knows how big of a change it will be, but it's definitely better than how it was before.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges here, and this is an NFL issue. This is an issue, I think, in general society when it comes to hiring practices. But there's a lot of gray area, and I think it's why you see in sports, particularly with athletes, you see there's probably a lot more minorities that get opportunities, and I think it's because sports still remains one of the true areas where your abilities to be able to do the job are very easy to see, right? You can tell a running back's really good because you can look at his production, right? It's a lot harder to be able to look at a position coach and say, yeah, he's a great coach. He'll be a great OC. He'll be a great DC. He'll be a great head coach, because a lot of his success is really dependent upon other people doing great jobs, right? And so there's all this gray area as to a great coach, and you usually don't see the great coach until he is the great coach, right? And so you have a lot of gray area to play with, and those are the areas where you tend to find a lot where you have to create these artificial ways of making sure that people who otherwise wouldn't get opportunities can get opportunities, because that gray area there isn't as clear cut as who are the great coaches from the guys that aren't the great coaches. You look at a guy like Jason Garrett, he checks a lot of the boxes, and you would think he's going to be really successful. I thought he would be very successful with the Cowboys. I thought he was a good leader. I thought he knew how to communicate well. There are a lot of things that he checks the box on, but he never got beyond that certain point as a head coach that moved him into that upper echelon of coaches that are considered to be really, really good head coaches, right? And so there is that gray area, and I think that's really kind of what this is all meant to combat to some degree.
You have to be fortunate. I mean, Jason Garrett was a good coach. I mean, you can't do anything for 9 years. He was a good coach, but Dallas Cowboys need better than good, and so good wasn't enough. He had great seasons when he really needed to. He had some bad luck as well. I mean, some of those games against the Packers that wasn't fortunate for him, but he also was fortunate in other ways. But it's all about who's around you. I mean, I know Eric Bieniemy gets a lot of talk about why he didn't get a head coaching job, and he probably will get a lot more chances too. But having Patrick Mahomes helps him. I mean, that helps him. Look at Jim Caldwell when he was coaching the Colts. I mean, Josh McDaniels, those guys coach great players, and so it is kind of hard to figure out what your value is. Is it about the players? Is it about you? Is it about the system? So whatever gives them an opportunity, coaches say all the time, put me in the room, let me talk, and let me sell myself. And I think this is going to give them, it's going to give a lot of coaches an opportunity to do that more.
One of the well-documented examples of the Rooney Rule and how it worked is Mike Tomlin. As the story goes, the Steelers were not necessarily thinking that he was going to be a really strong candidate, but they needed to give an African-American coach an opportunity, and they gave an opportunity, and he completely blew him away. And it turned out being a good hire for them. They got a coach that won a Super Bowl for him. So I think ultimately that's the whole point of the Rooney Rule, and even these changes to the Rooney Rule is get the guys opportunities to get in front of the right people, and then make the decision, right? But at least you gave them the opportunity to be able to sell themselves as the best head coaching candidate, the best offensive coordinator candidate, even the best GM candidate, and then based on that, you can make your decision, because it now gave them access to the process.
And I'm not trying to discredit Jason Garrett. He's a well-credentialed coach. He's had a lot of success as a coach. But to go back to my point, don't you feel like his relationships around football helped him fast-track his career? I mean, he played for the Cowboys. Absolutely. He was already on Jerry Jones's radar well before he even got into coaching. Parlayed a decade-plus worth of playing into getting a job with Nick Saban very, very early in his career. Honestly, and again, not to discredit the guy, but relationships helped him land with the Cowboys. His father, worked for the Cowboys. Like, again, who you know is very important. Not everybody's going to have such a wealth of connections. And so anything you can do to get new people in a room with decision makers, hopefully will be a good thing.
And also, it's like you guys said, it's about selling yourself. That when you do get that chance, that you are able to sell yourself and make it convincing. Because, for example, remember Chris Richard? Like, I was one of the ones that like, oh yes, Chris Richard for head coach. Let's go, come on. But after that, once I started hearing some things of the way he interviewed with other teams, that he wasn't necessarily a great interviewer. And from what I heard, those interviews didn't really go well. And the thing is that sometimes these teams, they also reach out to their prior team, and other GMs and other people, just to kind of find out, okay, how was this guy as a coach over there, behind the scenes? Because yes, you get to see what he does on the field and everything, but it goes beyond the things that you do on the field. It's also about those kinds of relationships and how are you as a leader, and that's one of the things that Garrett did have. But in general, it's just such a tricky position because so many things have to work in your favor that it's just really tough.
But all in all, I do think this is a move in the right direction. I think hopefully it will help to get more people opportunities that should get an opportunity. And we'll see if that ultimately ends up in them getting more jobs, because I do think at the end of the day, the results are just as important as the process. So hopefully this gets them more opportunities to get involved in that process. We're going to take our final break. When we come back, we got some questions. Amber lined up some questions from you, the fans. We'll do that when we come right back. This is DallasCowboys.com radio.
Want to use what the pros use? How about the official men's skincare brand of the Dallas Cowboys, Jack Black? Right now, you can get the Jack Black Starter, a curated collection of Cowboys locker room favorites for just $10 with free shipping. The starter includes 4 Jack Black skincare favorites, plus a full-sized intense therapy lip balm. Go to getjackblack.com/Cowboys and use the code word TEAMJB. That's getjackblack.com/Cowboys. The Jack Black Starter, $10, free shipping.
Whether you're into being a part of this or more into something like this, SeatGeek has the tickets to the events you love. It's the easiest way to find, buy, and sell tickets. Plus, with their Deal Score technology, they'll recommend the best seats in the house at the best value. So the next time you're craving this,
Blue 20!
download the SeatGeek app and let's go. SeatGeek.
I'm Jay Novacek, former tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Back in the day, I was the guy who always got the tough yards, and that's why I run with John Deere today. In fact, I have a John Deere 3025E tractor that can handle any yard work I need to do, even the tough yards way out back. So if you have 1 acre or 1,000, John Deere has the equipment that's just right for you. Visit a John Deere dealer today and run with us. We are the official tractor provider of your Dallas Cowboys.
Your new apartment's big. Such a great deal.
It's okay.
Just okay? What's not to...
It's right above the subway!
Well, I bet you don't even notice it after the...
That's my neighbor, Angus!
A deal that's just okay is not okay. Get a great deal with America's Best Network. Come into an AT&T store to find out how to get one of our popular smartphones for $0 down. Based on GWS 1 score, September 2019.
Back to the break.
We're in the final segment of the break. We are live from the virtual SWBC Mortgage Studios. We are in our homes, and we're talking a little Cowboys football. We're in the final segment. Amber has some questions lined up. Amber, what do you have?
All right, let's go. Since we have been talking about coaching, head coaching position and all that, I have a question about Mike McCarthy. I know that he's on a 1-year deal, but do you guys think that he gets a pass if the Cowboys end up with a losing record? I mean, does he have a shorter leash, or is he, compared to how they were with Garrett as far as patience,
So can I clarify real quick? Are you talking about, will the organization be patient with him, or the fans? Or the media?
No. Organization, Jerry Jones.
All right, got it. Nick, you had something to say. I saw you raise your hand.
Well, maybe I'm a little confused. I don't think he's got a 1-year deal. I don't know if that was the question. I don't know how the deal was structured. I think it's longer than a 1-year deal.
5-year contract.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like in this first year. In the first year, do you think that he gets like a shorter leash as far as patience was, or does he have to do a lot better than what Garrett gave you?
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Because we've seen in coaches, Jerry can do whatever he wants. As far as they can be a 1-year deal in his mind or whatever. As far as when does the seat start getting warm? Basically, I think he'll have a little bit of leeway, but everybody who thinks last year's roster was good probably will think this year's roster is really good as well. And I think that if they lose close games where it feels like the game was mismanaged or whatever, then I think it'll be this year when you start hearing, I thought this guy was a little bit better. So. I mean, a little bit of a leash, but I think with the Dallas Cowboys head coaching position, the criticism will always be there, and it'll start from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the court of public opinion, people expect wins, and they expect them right away. Like, if this season is even mediocre, people are going to be upset. That's just the nature of the beast. But, like, the Cowboys themselves, this season would have to be an unmitigated disaster they'd have to win 5 or fewer games for me to think like Mike McCarthy was going to get fired after 1 season on the job. Like that doesn't even happen. Nobody does that. Very rarely. I guess the Browns did it with Freddie Kitchens, but it was an unmitigated disaster. So it would have to be something really, really bad. And on top of that, the Cowboys they're not having an off season, not a traditional one at any rate. So you've already got that baked into the pie. It would be really, really surprising to see the organization lose faith with him before, at least 2 or 3 seasons.
I will say this though, I don't think there's anybody in this organization that doesn't believe they have a quality team as far as the personnel is concerned. And I'm talking a playoff caliber team, and who knows what beyond that. But so I do think there would be some raised eyebrows within the organization with people that matter if this team is not a playoff team. I think there'll be some questions on that because I think they feel like they already had a good roster. I think they feel like they had a wonderful, outstanding draft, as everybody wants to say. So I think when you combine all those things, and they're bringing in a coach who has the pedigree of Mike McCarthy. I think their expectations for Mike McCarthy is he's going to get this team in the playoffs and he's going to take them a long way. And maybe that doesn't have to happen. Like, they don't have to go all the way this year. But I do expect that if this is not a playoff team this year, I think there will be a little bit of disappointment. I think there will be expectations that he should be better, that this team should be better than that for this year.
Now, talking about the quarterback position, we know that Andy Dalton is going to be here with the Cowboys. Going back to when Mark Sanchez was here, we talked about how Mark Sanchez was able to help Dak with some of the things on the field and off the field and how to kind of manage and find his way through what he was dealing with at the position. When you look at Andy Dalton, what are some of the things or qualities that he can show Dak, or what can Dak learn from him?
I think, sorry, Dave, I think that, if you want to get really detailed with it, he's a guy, when Dak comes off the field, he can look over at Andy Dalton, and he has seen it before. He's seen it several times. He knows exactly what that defense is like. And to be specific, there are 4 games on the schedule that against teams that, Dak hasn't played since his rookie year. And Andy Dalton played him twice a year, and including Cincinnati in practice. So he'll be able to kind of help from that standpoint as well, just in those weeks. On a team that's not going to be as familiar for the Cowboys in the offense and for Dak. So I just think a veteran set of eyes and in his mind will be something that Dak will lean on if he allows to do that. If he allows himself to do that, which I think he will.
About to steal a stat from Twitter, and I apologize. I can't find who tweeted it, so I'm sorry to that person, but I saw it, blew my mind. Do y'all Dak already holds the Cowboys record by a considerable margin for consecutive starts, more than Romo. Romo obviously had a lengthy problem with injuries. Aikman had his injury issues as well, missed games in several seasons. Staubach, Dak is already way better than all of them. I think he's got 64, and behind him it's 37 or 40 something. Yeah, exactly. So, and the reason I bring it up is I was never worried about the backup quarterback position in the sense that he would have to play, because Dak has not really given a ton of indication that he would need to come off the field. But what's always bothered me about backup quarterback is, what do any of these guys know about quarterbacking that Dak Prescott doesn't? Hey, Coop, what'd you see out there? He's like, I don't know. I've only played in garbage time ever in my life. I'm not trying to dog Cooper Rush, but you'd like to think the backup quarterback can help the starter sort of navigate his way through a game or a season or a game plan. Andy Dalton started 133 games. He's been to the playoffs more times than Dak. I don't think he's a better quarterback than Dak right now, but he's got plenty of expertise to lend, and I think that makes him twice as valuable, on top of the fact that he could step into the lineup if he needed to.
There's not much to add to that. I think both those guys hit the nail on the head. It's the experience. So if nothing else, he'll be able to add some experience to what Dak has and has not been able to see. Although he's been in the league now long enough to where he's probably seen pretty much everything. It's just a matter of having another set of eyes that tells him what he's seeing as the game's going on.
And also, there's a misperception out there about competition. I think a lot of times people think that if somebody's not a real threat to take your job, that they're not competing with you. But any person that's competitive, any guy that's ever went out and played and saw, if Andy Dalton takes the second team offense down and scores a touchdown in the first, practice of training camp, Dak's going to see that. Dak knows that, and Dak's going to make sure that that the offense doesn't struggle. So it's not about taking his job. It's just taking it to another level. And I think Andy Dalton can do that better than anybody that's ever been around Dak.
That's a really great point, Nick. It's just setting that bar, right? You see the bar, and if you're a competitor, you go try to beat the bar, right? Yeah.
If Rob Phillips writes a really good story 2 days in a row, Dave's going to be, it's like, hey, I'm writing one too.
Hey, I want you too.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, that's with anybody. I'm that way as well. So I just think that will help. He's got somebody next to him that will push him, and I think it'll be done in a healthy way.
Okay, I didn't check this stat, so I don't know if it's 100% accurate or not, but according to this tweet, Chris Jones was the 23rd ranked punter on 2018 and 30th last year. Special teams have killed us over the last years. Any word on bringing in some competition at the punter position?
Mike was asked about that after the draft in one of the various Zoom calls that we did with them. Somebody asked him about that, and he made it sound like they feel pretty good about what they have. I think John Fossil is comfortable or optimistic about Chris Jones. I don't argue the point, and I don't even need to look at the rest of the NFL. Compare Chris Jones to himself. Go look at his numbers from 2016 and 2017 compared to the last two seasons. It's very drastic. The net punting, how many yards you're giving up, as well as your field position. In 2016 and 2017, he was pinning teams inside their own 20 half the time, and it just hasn't been the case. So I don't argue he has not been up to snuff, but you bring in a new coordinator, one of the better special teams coordinators in the league. If he thinks he can work with Chris, I trust that. I'm not panicking about it.
You don't think they need a contingency plan?
I think the contingency plan is whoever's out there when you decide. I mean, I think that you would probably go get a veteran punter. I don't think you're going to get a guy that's really going to push them all the time in practice. But I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't. I think that stats are weird when it comes to punting. You could be on the 40-yard line. You could punt it to the 10. That's a good punt, but it looks like a 30-yard punt to the guy in New York, and it doesn't look great. So the people that know are the ones that are right here, the ones that are in the press box, Dave, Derek, Amber, the ones that watch it and go, they need a really good punt here. And that wasn't. You could just tell from the eye test, and he struggled some last year. Now, he did have a back injury that affected him all last year. Wasn't publicly known a lot, but I do think that if he's healthy, he can be better. But the watch is on for him because they have to be better than what they were.
And the tough part for me is that it's been 2 years now. It was last year and the year before that he wasn't great. And so that's what makes me start to think at this point, maybe you're seeing a decline. Maybe they can get more out of him. I certainly am open to the idea if you bring in a new special teams coordinator and he's supposed to be one of the best in the league, that maybe he figures out some ways to be able to help him and to be able to get him back to what he was 2 years ago. But as of right now, I think they need a contingency plan. And again, maybe the thought is the contingency plan means that, whoever's out on the street right now likely is going to be out on the street once you get to training camp and beyond. So if you need to make a move, you already have that short list. You call those guys up and you make the move. But I just hope that they're thinking in that way, because I don't trust necessarily right now that he's going to have an about face from what he's been the last 2 years.
I think with him, let's not rule out how good is his arm or how good is his legs, because nobody runs more fake punts than John Fossil. He runs them all the time. And we've seen a couple fake punts out of Chris Jones. He's a good athlete. So that's going to factor into this. I mean, I know we're joking around about it, but, I mean, they're going to run some fake punts. And I think he's pretty good, guy to have in that regard. Obviously, you want to see how well he punts, because that's 99% of his job, or I'd say 75, because he is a holder as well. But, his athletic ability, the punter's athletic ability, is important to a John Fossil special teams.
This probably applies to any business, but my baseline attitude toward any player that struggled is it's a brand new coaching staff, it's an all new cast, and the schemes are going to change. And for the most part, I'm just willing to give anybody the benefit of the doubt, and let these coaches see what they can do with them. And you can reevaluate if that's not the case once you start playing football. But I feel plenty optimistic that Chris Jones can bounce back.
Hey, real quick, Amber, before we end the show, I wanted to get back to that question I was about to ask you guys in the first segment about Cheeto. I'll re-tee it up, but Cynthia Freeland of NFL.com, she was talking about, she named one player from every team that she thought was undervalued. She named Cheeto Awuzie, the guy for the Cowboys. She said he's been Farless talked about, despite forcing 18 incompletions in 2019, third most in the NFL, a stat I did not know. We also did some research looking into just Pro Football Focus's coverage ratings. Richard Sherman was at the top of the list with 90.5 rating. Byron Jones was 16th at 74.8 rating. And Cheeto, get this, was number 26 at 70.5 rating, which if you think about it, you got 32 teams, and that means you got 2 cornerbacks at least on all those teams, not including the third cornerback, which would make that number even higher. So 26 is not a horrible place as far as a ranking in the NFL as far as cornerbacks. My question for you guys is, have we undervalued what Chidobe Awuzie has been for this team at cornerback? Let's start with you, Dave.
As usual, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit because, one, I do think Cheeto probably, like, the rap is worse than the actual on-field product. It is hard to play cornerback. It's a thankless job. If you give up completions, that's what people remember. I think you can say the same thing about Anthony Brown. I think he is a better player than the public discourse gives him credit for. Having said that, I can't sit here and say that I think Cheeto is undervalued. Like, you can go back and watch. Like, the plays are there. His coverage is usually good, but at some point, you have to admit that the opposing receiver makes the reception. You have to admit that he had problems finding the ball with how often he was targeted. You have to admit that he was taken out of a game by the coaching staff for coming late on an angle and giving up a big run play. I think it was against who was that against? It was like Buffalo, maybe. It was like in December. I don't know, but he was pulled out of the starting lineup by the coaching staff. So all that stuff is still true. It's kind of like what I said about Chris Jones. It's like I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that a change of coaches and a change of scenery do him good. I do think he's a capable NFL starter, but I can't go as far as to say he's the most undervalued player on the roster. Definitely not.
I think that the premise behind that point is the fact that he's ranked 112th in the league in cornerbacks average salary. He's making just over $1 million. I think he's 5th on the Cowboys roster, right ahead of C.J. Goodwin, who's not ever going to play corner, and Daryl Worley and Trevon Diggs, who's never had a snap, and Anthony Brown, and I think Maurice Kennedy. They're all ranked, higher than him, and he could be your best cornerback. Cheeto could be. So I think that's where that comes in. It comes in, anytime you get in the last year of your deal, you're going to be undervalued because you're probably a good player that's starting, and your contract's still not there yet because you haven't got a second deal. So I think he's good, like Dave said. I agree with everything Dave said. He had some problems last year. Your expectations were higher. But I think that, he's making $1 million a year. There's a lot of corners making more, and a lot of them aren't even cornerbacks in this league. They're special teams guys.
This before, I do see the talent in him. I think we've seen it before. We've seen the kind of like competitive nature that he has. He's a physical guy. He can do it. He can do it. I had high hopes for him last year. Obviously, it didn't go. I'm sure how he planned it to go. But when you talk about a guy like him, I think that regardless of whatever people say, regardless of whatever stat, this year he's gonna have a lot to prove if he wants to even stay on the team. So at this point, whether he's undervalued or not, you got to step it up and just find a place on the roster. And if you talk about undervalue, I would be talking about a guy like Jordan Lewis instead, when you're looking at those stats. But yeah, he hopefully can step it up this year. And with the addition of these other younger guys, that can bring out more competitiveness out of everyone. And we'll see what happens there at the position.
All right, that's a wrap. We appreciate you guys joining us this week. We'll be back next week at our normal time, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Till then, for Nick Eatman, Dave Hellman, Amber Garcia, I am Derek Eagleton. This has been The Break live on DallasCowboys.com radio.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?